Welcome to episode 2 of the LAtinX Point of View podcast. I'm your host, Leo Scarpati, along with my co-host, Gina Esquivel. And on today's episode, we'll be discussing how social media can skew our point of view. Because I think sometimes on social media, people get lost in the... They just get lost in the... I don't know how to describe it, like chusmeria. You know, it's just, they just get lost in the gossip. Yeah, they get lost in the chisme, they get lost in the sensation.
LAtinX Point of View is brought to you by Civic Canvas, a bilingual boutique firm designing strategies for social change. To learn more at civiccanvas.com.
So I was sitting here thinking the other day, and I was on social media, and I was saying to myself, do people really believe what they're typing or what they're sharing? So I kind of wanted to pose a question to you and get your thoughts on how social media can skew our point of view on certain topics.
Well, I will say that it changed me. I grew up in the 80s being a teenager, and then our social networks were shaped completely different. And when you see now that you have to actually keep up with social media and create this new persona that you have to manage, all of a sudden you have to change and become a marketeer. You know, you have to be really good at marketing, how you create your own brand on social media. So it has changed. I think it has changed my point of view of other people, and unfortunately, it starts changing your point of view. How do you see yourself when you know how others see you? And whether they like something you posted, how many views you had. So there is a little bit of that.
That's interesting. So people feed off of other people's reactions. Where in the past, it might have been on a conversational piece. You had some people maybe agreeing on a certain subject, but we had different types of dialogue. One of the things I've seen on social media is people get that instant reaction, you know, so it's not like a piece of news broke and instead of taking the time to look into it, no, I'm going to say the first thing that comes to my mind, whether it's correct or incorrect. And we've had to have people go back and say, oh, I apologize. But unfortunately, sometimes that apology doesn't make the big news cycle like the main breaking news that happened. And I think that's one of the things with social media that I think people should try to be cautious with.
It's kind of how we respond to stuff. I mean, I will disclose that I'm completely addicted to my notifications. And
oh, yeah?
And actually, I saw someone last week who told me that they actually had removed all social media from their first screen.
Oh, wow.
And have moved it to their second screen. And that's because you kind of start looking at this instant gratification, you know, kind of following up what you had just said is how do we know this automatic comes up, like when you make a post and it says your post has been uploaded and you're looking for the next time you get a notification, it tells you that someone responded. And is there a true gratification? I mean, what is it? I just don't know. I mean, in reality, I don't know what is it that I'm looking for when I see that someone looked at it or someone liked it. Is that I don't trying to find what is the reward.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because I myself on social media, I don't have the notifications turned on. So one of the things that I do is I turn off all the notifications. And when I want to go into social media and check to see anything, that's when I'll be able to see them. But for them to, you know, shoot onto my screen and let me know somebody liked your tweet, somebody liked your post, it's just not me. I think I'd be too caught up into it. And knowing myself, I see that as too much of a distraction. I've never really wanted to turn that on. But I think you're right. I think a lot of people do that. It kind of leads to the point of sometimes people sensationalizing something just for the reaction of the public. And I think that can be dangerous when we get down to the nitty gritty.
No, and you know, you try to kind of use, we used to do this in Costa Rica, which is when you create the newspaper that is amarillo, we call it amarillista, which is kind of makes this news like really, really blasted and kind of put the worst picture, the most dramatic picture with the most dramatic title to kind of get people. And we knew that those people who did that were actually not necessarily respectful reporters, or were they even reporters, because they were trying to sell the newspaper. And I'm finding that two different versions now on social media where you don't know if something is, just kind of blasted out there to get your attention, or is really a really heavy content in some of the postings.
No, it's really interesting that you mentioned that because I remember, back in the day, it wasn't social media, it was the National Enquirer. So the National Enquirer would constantly have headlines, Bigfoot is here, or Elvis is still alive. And, today, if you were to put something like that on social media, you'd have a bunch of people kind of saying, oh my God, I think Elvis is alive. Man, somebody did take a picture of Bigfoot even though it's obviously staged. And I
I,
think
I will click on it.
you would click on it. See, and that's the thing. So you don't have to necessarily stand in the grocery store register anymore to see these made up news or this made up media. People are doing it online just for clicks and for getting that sensation of saying, "Ooh, I put something out there that people are sharing and people are liking." I just I've never been one that jumps onto that phenomenon, and I've tried. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've sometimes failed, but I try to not be one of those people that has that instant formulation of opinion and comments right away, because I think
Gotcha.
that's a really dangerous thing.
So you kind of pace yourself to know what the best answer it is. Well, and but that has to do with age. I'm sorry, but it has to do with the way you grew up and knowing that what you put there is going to carry on. But what happens when you're not even thinking about that? You just put something like, I mean, remember that one person that made a comment on their Twitter feed and they got fired the next day. And then, I don't want to create politics around our podcast, but there was one person who said, so and so looks like what, and next day they're fired. And I mean, in my head, it's like, don't you know that will get you fired?
I think some people, and I think you bring up a great point, and some people try to fall under that banner or that power of anonymity. Anonymity. Whoo, that's a tough word to swallow. So that power of anonymity, kind of people feel brave around
Anonymity.
it. But if you, but it,
Anonymity.
but if your boss is, if your friend on social media or if they follow you, these are things you want to be cautious with. If your organization or the company you work for has a large presence on social media, and you've, before posted, hey, I work for so and so company, I could understand how those companies would be like, I don't like what you said on social media. And in most states in the United States, we have right to work states, you're fired. So
Yeah,
while people do have the right to free speech, companies do have the right to fire you.
they do. They do. I do. There are times that I really want to kind of exercise that free speech, and I have daydream about creating a very anonymous account and just
Burner
really.
account, burner account. You got to
Burn.
get a burner
Oh my
account.
gosh, I never heard of that. I never heard of that
Got
burner
to get a
account.
burner account.
Yeah, and I wanted to get a burner account now that I know what that is, and kind of say what is in my mind, because there's some, there's the the expression of what I think people should think. I think, but then there is the true, like, oh no, you did not just say that. Oh Lord have mercy. I mean, just like, what did you just say? Why did you say that? Are you really? I mean, there's some people who have been in some places where I. And I've seen them even post things, and I just know that it's just not a personal exchange. There is an audience that are watching, and the reason why you want a little bit of anonymity. But at the same time, I've seen so much bullying because of it too.
Yeah, bullying is and people sometimes just equate to bullying as things that happen to children. Nah, man, I've seen grown adults going after each other and that trolling effect. And I don't know what kind of gratification or why people have that feeling to put other people down and it makes them feel good. If you can't have an intelligent conversation on a topic on social media without calling somebody a name or without insulting their personal appearance or something that they said before, then I mean, I'm not saying why are you on there. I know why you're on there. You're there for the, for what people call the smoke. People want to go on there and
Yeah.
they want to create this conflict, but I wish people would look internally. Why do you want to project that kind of hate out into the world? You know?
Yeah, and it makes me think that, I mean, there is actually people who just want to do that. They just want to feeding into other people's drama, other people's reactions, and it just, you know what, it makes me realize the rainbow of people in the world. Because
Yeah.
sometimes I stay in my little bubble and I just want to think everybody's good and everybody's well intended, and then I read a post and I see the comments and I'm thinking, wow, this is the reality of what people think, and how is really, and what kind of they present to you, and then what you hear is like, oh, this is truly what you think. And
Yeah.
but lately is that you don't know. Do you really want to know, or do you really want to have that politically correct version? Do you want to hear and it's hard because it starts. And I wonder, like in the next couple of years or 3 years, because everything is moving so fast, that you start wondering, like, how is this going to really shape our brain? Because it's developing a pattern. And when you're thinking about uh, the social media skew our point of view, and it's what are we looking in the next couple of years? Because at one point we're going to saturate of this. So what is next? Are we going to be looking for a little bit more hardcore stuff or softer stuff? I really don't know.
Well, in terms of people have always kind of gone into their own camps. So, from what I see on social media, and I've seen it evolving over the last couple of years, is you don't follow everybody. You only follow people who have your shared opinion. Just so in case you get into an argument, people start backing you up. I don't know if that's the right
That's a good
mindset
point.
to have. What happened to having dialogue with the other side? One of the biggest things I love to do is whenever I have a different point of view than someone else, is ask them why they feel that way, why they back that particular issue, and from a general point of trying to understand what they're thinking, not from this point of trying to be combative with them. I generally want to understand what why their point of view is different than mine and see if we can find a common ground. Because
Mm-hmm.
that's where I think things need to, I think that's where we've lost things. We've lost that common ground. We've lost that common ground in everywhere, on social media, in the real world, in politics. And, I don't want to get political on here. It's just, that's the world that we see, and that's the world that kind of encompasses us.
And I don't think you're getting political, but because it is happening in most of what is obvious to us in most governments in different countries. It's just that
Sure.
we have one example, but there are other ones like France and Britain and the European Union, and there are other countries who are having to decide whether you're left or right. And like you said, there is nothing in the middle, and we kind of missing how to build that up. But we can, sometimes what I consider to be an automatic weapon for me, like what you just described, to seek to understand and not to be understood. I have to acknowledge that I was trained to do that. I was one trained in mind and heart. I was brought up in a very caring family that taught me that you need to always have, even I remember my mom saying, if my sister and brother were fighting, you're like, oh, todavía se dan de la mano. You still have to hold hands or shake hands. And we were really upset because we were fighting about something. And she says, you still, brother and sister, you have to hold your hands or shake your hands. And to me, that was always like a preface of my life to say, no matter how upset you are, you really need to find the humanity in it. Well, that was one by, kind of being brought up in that environment, but also being trained to kind of seek for those spaces, but not everybody.
That segment of the LatinX Point of View podcast was brought to you by L5 Consultants, a company committed to helping bridge cultural differences. You can find them on the web at l5online.com or on Twitter at L5 Consultants. Now, back to the conversation. Yeah, that you're right. That's the way we were raised, but and I don't know if there's been a change in the moral fiber, or if